The weight of the laurel. The shadows in the Roman Curia were long and heavy, much like the history Octavian carried. He was 35, though his eyes looked as though they had watched centuries pass. The civil wars had ended, the fires of Egypt were cold, and the Mediterranean had finally stopped weeping blood. Now Octavian stood in the silence of his villa, listening to the city breathe, wondering if a man could ever truly stop being a soldier to become a ghost of peace. His loyal friend Agrippa joined him, the scent of dust and sea salt still clinging to his robes. Agrippa was the iron that had forged Octavian's throne, the architect of victories that Octavian had only dreamed. Together they looked at the map spread across a heavy cedar table. The world was theirs, yet it felt fragile, like a piece of papyrus held too close to a flame. "Victory is easy," Agrippa whispered, "but stability? That is the work of a lifetime." Alone in his study, Octavian felt the crushing weight of his Uncle Caesar's legacy. To hold too much power was to invite the dagger. To hold too little was to invite the chaos. He reached for a scroll, his fingers trembling slightly. The Republic was a corpse, yet the people demanded it walk again. He knew he had to perform a miracle of theater. He had to give everything away to keep everything that mattered. Livia entered with the quiet grace that defined her. She did not need a crown to command a room. She stood behind him, her hands resting on his shoulders, her presence a grounding force in the storm of his ambition. "They do not want a king, Octavian," she said softly into the cool air. "They want a god who calls himself a citizen. Give them back their freedom, and they will hand you the world in return." On the 13th of January, 27 BC, Octavian walked into the Senate house. The air was thick with the scent of expensive wool and anxiety. He stood before the assembled men, the very men who had once feared his name. With a voice that did not waver, he announced his resignation. He returned his legal powers, his armies, and his provinces to the Senate and the people of Rome. He stepped back, a man stripped of his armor, waiting for the echo. Among the senators sat Sextus, a man who remembered the old days before the triumvirs. He watched Octavian with narrow, skeptical eyes. He saw the calculated humility, the practiced tilt of the head. Sextus knew this was a dance, a grand performance where every step was measured. Yet, as he looked around at the tired faces of his peers, he realized that they were all hungry for the lie of restoration if it meant an end to the dying. The silence broke not with a protest, but with a roar of acclaim. Sextus was the first to rise, his voice joining the chorus that begged Octavian to stay. He approached the younger man, holding a decree that had been prepared in the quiet corners of the night. "You shall not be a king," Sextus said, his voice carrying through the hall. "But you shall be Augustus, the revered one, the foundation upon which we rebuild." The transition was complete. Octavian was gone, and Augustus had risen in his place. They placed the corona civica, the crown of oak leaves, upon his brow, a symbol not of a conqueror, but of a savior of citizens. He felt the leaves against his skin, a light weight that felt heavier than any gold. He was no longer a man, he was an institution. The era of the Republic had ended in a standing ovation. Months later, Augustus walked through the Forum with Agrippa. The city was a forest of scaffolding. The red brick of the old world was being encased in white marble from Luna. "I found Rome a city of clay," Augustus remarked, watching the stonemasons polish a massive Corinthian capital. Agrippa nodded, looking at the soaring temples. "And you will leave it a city of stone," his friend replied. "But stone is cold, my friend. It needs a soul to keep it warm." Augustus stood in the center of his completed forum, the white marble blinding in the noon sun. He had traded his youth for peace and his name for a title. He knew that history would judge him, not for the battles he won, but for the silence he maintained. He was the first of many, a bridge between the chaos of the past and the order of the future. The boy who would be king had become the man who was Rome,